Meine Herren, the target for today is Guriskaya. Specifically, you have to destroy the enemy's supply dump located in that town. This supply dump is a vital logistics node supplying the enemy's offensive aimed at breaking the blue line. Navigation. Friendly fighters will meet us over Gostagaevskaya airfield and escort us all the way to and from the target. The track on the run-up will be 101 degrees. Navigational features near the target include a major T-shaped road intersection, a river, and railway line beyond, all of which should be plainly visible. The target itself is located just south of this T intersection. The formation will bomb from an altitude of 3,000 meters, or possibly higher at commander's discretion. However, we feel that this low altitude will equalize the risk from flak with bombing accuracy. Weather. We have a single cloud layer at 1,000 meters. Winds are from the north, variable depending on altitude. You can expect light flak over the front line and over the target. Enemy fighter strength is believed to be substantial. We will be running the gauntlet of several Soviet fighter bases. This target is a long way behind enemy lines. This will require maximum effort from all of you. Each aircraft will carry 8 250-kilogram general-purpose bombs, with the exception of those older aircraft in the formation, which will carry 4. Each aircraft will carry 1,700 liters of fuel. This should provide an adequate reserve. That's all. Good luck. Welcome aboard my He-111, and welcome to a new Ironman career in said aircraft. I'm going to get the takeoff roll going here, and then I'll do a little more talking afterwards. I'm going to take off with flaps 10, which I think is the bare minimum we can get away with from this field. I don't love using flaps in the 111 because it can be a little bit difficult to accelerate with them down after liftoff. But we don't really have any trees to climb over, so I'm not too worried about that. So, let's roll. Airspeed's alive. I'll keep us more or less straight down the runway here. Although it's basically an open field, so not that much of a bother. Still, it's good to stay coordinated on the takeoff roll. Speed's coming up, 140, 150. Coming up on the end of the runway. I think that's enough. That's about 170, 180. Yeah, up we go. Gear up. I want to get just a little bit more speed, preferably up over 200. And flaps up. And set climb power, which is 1.25 ATA and 2400 RPM. Or roughly 85% on both of these jobbies here. And also, I'll get the radiators open, nice and wide. The 75% is probably adequate, but I'll continue to monitor. And if we have a look at the map, I will go on for a very short straight line after takeoff, and I won't leave the map open for too long, and then I'll make a right turn and get on our heading towards where we're going to meet up with our fighter escort, and that turn should enable the rest of the formation to keep up, in my experience. That being said, I will throttle back briefly until, well, I'll throttle back to maximum continuous power until everyone's formed up. And I think it's about time to make that turn. Our initial heading is going to be about 110 degrees. So we shall come right and have a look out of the window to see what the rest of the formation is up to. Now, AI bombers can occasionally do some slightly silly things, but hopefully we don't have any collisions. That's the main thing I'm worried about, which does happen now and then. Yeah, looks like they're forming up very nicely, and because we're making a greater than 90-degree turn, we're kind of closing the circle. 111s don't usually have trouble keeping up. I had no end of trouble way back in the day when I did my A20 career with having the formation keep up when I was at high-ish power settings. Speaking of which, since we're in Kuban, this will, in some ways, probably make a fairly nice companion piece to the A20 career I did, geez, probably 4 years ago now. Oh, and I've blown slightly through our heading. I'll keep running on max continuous power for just a little bit until everyone's formed up, and then I will put takeoff power back on, and we'll start climbing again. As I mentioned in the briefing, our notional bombing altitude is 3,000 meters, but depending on conditions, I may go higher as an aid to survivability. We have such a long way to go. This mission may have a somewhat low survival probability, which makes it, well, perhaps a bit of a dubious thing to have as the first mission. Alright, everyone looks to be formed up, so I will set climb power, which is, again, about 85% on both throttle and prop. You can push them up slightly further, but it's nice to give the rest of the formation a slight margin and still be within their climb power limits so that they don't blow up their engines trying to keep up with us. Now, in terms of navigation, I'm going to be going by pretty much pure pilotage for the first little bit as we climb, just because it's hard to multitask and do lots of calculations at the same time. But we're going to aim for basically right at the tip of the Taman Peninsula here as our next major landmark, which I can just about spot over there, kind of. Hard to tell where the actual edge is, but I think we're heading in approximately the right direction. So, I really don't have too much more to say beyond that. I'll just keep climbing and carry on that way. Right, we are crossing the Kerch Strait and coming up on Taman, climbing through 2,400 meters. And at this point, as flight commander, I have made an executive decision, which is that given that we have lots of time left to go before we cross the front line, I am probably going to climb to 5,000 meters. At the very least, I'm going to climb above 3,000, just as a general risk mitigator. Since we are going such a long way behind enemy lines, if it takes enemy fighters a little longer to climb to meet us, or any flak has a slightly lower probability of hitting us, I really think there's no reason not to, well, have that life insurance that altitude brings us. A word about engine management. We should be going over the altitude at which the supercharger switches into its second gear. I believe that's at 3,000 meters, at which point we'll get back up to our maximum climb power of 1.25 ATA. In terms of temperatures, I've got the oil radiators full open, and the oil temperature is about 90 degrees, which is acceptable. I've got the coolant/water radiators open 75%, and that's maintaining 90 degrees as well, which is also acceptable. 90 degrees is the optimal coolant temperature. 80 degrees is the optimum oil temperature, although it can get a little higher than that before it becomes a problem, so no trouble at all. The temperature at sea level was 28 degrees Celsius. Temperature at the altitude we're climbing to right now, it's down to about -5, so the engines will probably start to cool a little bit as we carry on up. And I suspect in the cruise I'll be able to close the radiators down almost entirely. But we'll have to see. I'll probably check in again when we level off. Right, just checking in again. That is, actually I can't see it now. Behind that cloud, I could see it a second ago, oh there it is Ugostagaevskaya Airfield, which is where our fighter escort is going to be taking off from. So it's right here. We're currently over this lagoon here. We're currently climbing through 4,400 meters, heading to 5,000. Once we level off, I will actually go into the bomb site and use it to calculate drift, which is a very handy thing that you can do in IL-2 Great Battles, and which I will demonstrate once we do level off. Because we have a very substantial wind component on this mission, so calculating drift correctly will be vital in both navigating to the target and putting bombs on it. Speaking of navigation, one thing I have noticed during the climb is that we have an unforecast second cloud layer at about 3,500 meters. It seems relatively thin, but if it does cause any substantial issues with navigation, I may have to make another executive decision and descend back down to a lower altitude, but I will only do that if I absolutely have to, since it will elevate all of our risk factors. So, yeah, because as you can see, wind at 5,000 meters from 359, so near enough due north, at 22 meters per second. I don't know what that comes out to in any other unit of measure, but it's quite a lot. Meters per second to measure wind in aviation is a bit of a uniquely Russian thing, which is probably why it made it into this game, because it'll be what the developers are accustomed to. Would be if we had it in kilometers per hour, it would mean that I could calculate drift with my E6B flight computer, which is on the desk in front of me. But as it happens, the bomb sight is actually quite helpful for that purpose, which I shall demonstrate shortly. Okay, we just shot some flares and got some indication over the radio that our fighter escorts are taking off directly below us. We're just about to level off at 5,000 meters, which timed out really, really well. Completely unintentional on my part. I didn't do any climb calculations or anything. I'm kind of really much too lazy to do things like a detailed nav log for an IL-2 mission when I don't really, really have to. Anyway, there's 5,000. We'll level off. And there are our fighters lifting off down there. Jolly good. And now that we're level, I'll just hold for a few seconds to let the speed build up a little bit. And then we'll ease her on back to continuous power, or roughly 75 squared, as I like to call it, which is 1.1 ATA and 2250 RPM, which is our maximum continuous power, which we will use for cruise. We shouldn't need to throttle back any further. We've got plenty of fuel. And I will now jump down into the bomb site to do a little bit of drift calculation. So our track... Okay, this is the part where I confuse all the Americans with my Canadian and, by lineage, British flying terminology. Our course, as they would put it, over the ground is 101 degrees. Now, the wind at 5,000 meters is from near enough due north of that track at 21 meters per second. Our airspeed is going to get up to about 300 once we get up to speed, probably. Actually, I'll dial it back to 280 for now. That's one simplification that IL-2 Great Battles makes. It is not necessary to calculate true airspeed. The bomb sight seems to do that for you. Our altitude, as indicated in the bomb sight view, is 5,200 meters, so I'll dial that in. And that's giving us a correction of 14 degrees to starboard. So I will subtract, hang on, it was 101 degrees, minus 14 is 87? God, I hope I'm right. That would be embarrassing if I'm not. My math is kind of comically bad, but anyway, so we will come left to a preliminary corrected heading of 087 degrees, and then I will also use the bomb sight to pick up landmarks in front of us so that we're doing a sort of mix of pilotage and dead reckoning navigation here, if one is familiar with those terms. So, let's see what we can look for in terms of visual checkpoints. The town of Krimskaya here, we're supposed to pass right over the southern edge of it. That might be a little far to see through the bomb sight just yet, but let's see. So we'll add our drift factor in on the view mode here. And just flip back and forth to make sure I've gotten it exactly right. Yep. And tootle on out. And see what we can see. And yeah, I don't... Well, that might be Krimskaya over here, actually, where the smoke's coming from, but it might be a little early to pick that out just now. Well, actually, no. If I were sitting here with a pair of binoculars, which imagine I am, I would have a view like this. And, well, that could also be Moldavanskoye. Little bit hard to tell. Is there a bit poking out? To the south. Or actually, no, the key thing would be whether we could... Okay, yeah. That's Moldavanskoye with the smoke coming out of it, and that's Krimskaya beyond it with the river running through the center, right? Yes. Okay, I can see that pretty well now. So where does the river bend? Right in the middle of town, which means we need to pass over the south end. A little hard to see through the bomb sight just now, but I think we are more or less on track. So we should be good to carry on. I'm not too worried about my ability to find the target. Kuban is a very easy map to navigate on compared to the others. It has lots and lots of rivers, lakes, coastlines, and distinctively shaped cities and towns. And that combined with the fact that, well, for those of you who don't know, I am a real-world pilot, and navigation was my best subject on the exams, so I like to think I'm fairly good at it. Anyway, moving on to engine management. I'll dial this back slightly. Actually, no, that should be 1.1 at top. Well, I'll keep it at 75% just so that we have some wiggle room for the formation. Engine management I've been neglecting since we leveled off. I think I can close down both radiators to 25% preliminarily. I can probably close them further than that. I fly the 111 in multiplayer a lot, so I have a pretty good idea of what settings it needs under given conditions. But I'll just continue to keep an eye on it and adjust it as we go, and we'll press on. Alright, one slight calculation, well, one slight adjustment later, and we are pretty much perfectly on track, currently passing over Krimskaya and nearing the front line. So, before we're likely to end up in combat, the only other thing I was going to do as a sort of introduction to this series is take you on a little tour of the He-111 H16, because compared to the H6 in Battle of Stalingrad, which some of the poor suckers in our flight are still flying, it has some improvements. So, first, we'll start at the pointy end, or at least as pointy as this airplane gets. In the nose, we have, as standard, a 20mm cannon, which is a very nice upgrade in firepower. All of the machine guns in the H6 as standard are MG15s, which are rifle caliber machine guns fed from drums, which is not ideal. Moving back onto the top turret, we have a 13mm MG131 machine gun, belt fed, so no need to fuss around with the drums. So being 13mm or just over 50 caliber, this packs a much larger punch than the 7.92mm or 30 caliber machine guns. There are fighters up overhead. A few of the bombers seem to have dropped back a little bit. I'm going to actually reduce power slightly to see if they can catch up. I'll do that from up here, because why not? Hopefully they can do so easily enough. I'm not sure why. Anyway, they look like they're getting closer. So back to the tour. Yeah, this is the MG131. And then moving down into the, I'm not sure what to call it, the ventral position. Yeah, that's what this is. We have twin belt-fed 7.92mm MG81 rifle caliber machine guns, which are okay. Again, this is all an upgrade, but it's still really woefully inadequate for this aircraft to be able to protect itself. It does require fighter escort. The Schnellbomber concept, well, whilst may be viable in the mid-30s, is not viable now. Anyway, down here at the waist position, we have a pair of single MG81 7.92mm belt-fed machine guns, which can protect us from beam attacks, theoretically. And I think that's it. Yes, that brings us back up into the cockpit. So, good lord, that's an airfield down there. I think it's right on the front line. Yeah, it's this one. So, next navigational checkpoints. Let's make sure we're passing over the north end of Abinskaya. We're passing just to the right of it. I'm going to bring us about 2 degrees to starboard, I think should be adequate to regain track. We've got this next town here, Akhterskaya, and we want to pass over this thin bit. Well, that should be eminently visible by now. Okay, yeah, I will come slightly further to starboard and just regain track visually from there. And I might run another calculation just to make sure we're... well, I got our corrected heading correct, as it were. But that might all be just a little bit too boring to be doing constantly and making all these little adjustments on the way to the target. It is a long way to go after all, so... Oh, One more point of engine management before I go. I think I can close down the water radiator to about 10% and still keep the temperature well within the happy range. Oil temperature is pretty good. Coolant temperature is actually getting a bit low. Optimal is about 90 degrees, as I said, so we shall press on. Just checking in again. We're passing over a little navigational checkpoint south of Siverskaya, which is the very ending point of this river down here, which is this here, which means we are absolutely on track. Now, one thing that I've had to do, if I hop into the top turret, I have had to slow way down to 250 kilometers an hour so that our aircraft could stay in formation. Interestingly enough, it's my fellow 111 H16s that haven't been able to keep up while the H6s can. Presumably because I gave the H6s a lighter bomb load. One quirk of the H6 is, at least in game, they all have half of the bomb bay blocked off and filled in with an extra fuel tank, which means they can only carry half the internal bomb load that we can. Now, the default loadout it was going to give them for this mission had them carrying an additional 500 kilo bomb externally, in addition to the 4 250s internally. But carrying an external bomb slows them down massively, and then they wouldn't have been able to keep up, so I only gave them the 4 250s. But that has made them a lot lighter than the H16, so that's probably why this whole thing has happened. Anyway, it's just a situation that we're going to have to deal with. It makes us more vulnerable, but we have to have a good formation in order to have a good pattern on the target. Anyway, come left to 085 was my new corrected heading, because I had to change it for the lower speed. And given where we are, I really expect to come under fighter attack pretty soon, but hey, you never know. Our next navigational checkpoint will probably be this road here, and then the river crossing just north of Saratovskaya after that. That should be a nice positive fix, and from there we should be able to find the target. So we'll see how that goes. Alright, that down there, if I can see it, that town, that's not really visible under my right rudder pedal, oh for heaven's sake, this town down here is Saratovskaya, and this bend in the river just north of it, right here, is my final navigation checkpoint, so effectively our initial point heading towards the target. So let's get the bombs set up. I'm going to drop, I think at a 0.10 second interval, dropping all the bombs. I'll recheck our speed input once the bomb bay doors are open, because we will inevitably slow down once that's the case. Let's see, at least here. I can't see the target yet. It should be plainly visible because it's next to a river, which I can't quite pick out. So, since we have some time, I'll just recheck everything. Altitude, 5,200 meters, speed 280, although I expect to have to dial that back to 260 or 250 with the added drag once the bomb bay doors are open. Wind is from 358 at 21 meters per second, which relative to our track is there, 100 degrees. Okay. Well, I think that should be okay. All we really have to do is carry on and bomb the target. Any engine management that needs seeing to? Well, temperature's a little high, but I'm not really worried about it as long as we maintain speed. If I need to get rid of a few kilometers an hour to get a nice round number for the speed in order to get a more accurate bomb drop, I might open them up a bit. Anyway, Guriskaya, where are you? Oh, hang on. That might be... No, that's not RT intersection because it's not next to the river. It's this one here. So we should have the bend in the road and then another, and the target should be about here. Hopefully not obscured by this low cloud. Hopefully. Oh, Murphy's Law dictates that it will be. Can I pick it out yet? Yeah! There's the town, and yeah, I can see it. Right there is the target. Alright, we'll come left slightly to align with it. Based on the current drift input on the site. And in order not to tempt the gods, I'm not going to say anything at all about the thing that hasn't happened yet. Um, I think you can figure out what I mean by that. Oh dear, there's the target. We will focus on that at the expense of all health for now. Okay, in the name of having an accurate airspeed figure, I think it's time to open the bomb bay doors, which the rest of the formation should do as well. At the very least, they'll do it when I automatically give the command to hold formation release on my command, blah, 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 blah. I'm getting a little bit worried about this cloud up here, but we'll see what that does. Airspeed's still holding at 280, which is interesting, but I won't necessarily complain. Speed is life, altitude is life insurance. I'd like to hang on to lots of both. Okay. Oops. How did I manage to... Okay, I'm glad I caught that, because I kind of befiddled that before. I'm curious as to whether I should be applying the wind angle based on our actual heading or based on our track over the ground. It's not a massive difference anyway. So maybe I will split the difference for now. Okay, target is plainly in view. We'll realign on it so that we're centered. My aiming point will be right in the middle. That should mean that the rest of the formation's bombs hit it very, very nicely. Okay, airspeed. Now at about 275. Okay, time to open those oil rads up a little bit. Kill a bit more speed. To get it back to an even 270 for the drop. It looks intuitively to me within the sight like we might be drifting a little bit. Now I'm not going to use the automatic bombing option just because I'm a little paranoid about it not getting things quite right. But rechecking everything. 270, 5,200. Wind, drift, and factors correct. Bombs are set up. Interval and quantity. Okay. It all boils down to this. And I believe that's the drop on my command thing going out. Yep. 270. You know what? I'll open those rads up just a little bit further to get rid of more speed to make it an even 270. I want this to be as accurate as I possibly can. And... Los! And I'll keep the sight view open just so we can see the effect on target very positively. Oh, I hope I got this right. And I didn't do anything bloody obvious and stupid that the audience will all have noticed and will all be ripping their hair out about. Well, we'll find out in a few seconds. Okay, oh yeah, that's pretty good. Okay, yeah, very good effect on target. That was an excellent pattern. Almost couldn't have asked for better. Maybe if I'd walked mine back very slightly, but I'm not complaining. So, okay. Let's get the hell out of here. Now, our track for the first leg of the return is 278. I already calculated the drift component for it, which means we need to correct 14 degrees left. So 278 minus 14. You want to pick up a heading of 264. And we will come around, do that. And now, in terms of the thing that I refused to talk about earlier, I fully expect to be picked up by fighters on the way out. I think there's no way we are going to be lucky enough for a trip this deep into enemy territory to be a milk run. I fully expect it to happen, but we'll just have to see for now. Alright. 1, 2, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4. Whoops, I blew past it slightly. That was a little bit slovenly. Oh well. And I'll just correct very slightly with the, oop, slightly too much. Okay, heading to 264, and I'll just use the bomb site viewer. Now, one downside of the fact that you can use the bomb site to correct drift, or to calculate drift, is that you can't anymore once you've dropped the bombs, because if you go into manual mode, it just reverts to a neutral position, which is why I calculated the drift factor before dropping the bombs during the cruise, because I just had all kinds of time to do it. So, yeah. Correction, or no, it was 14 to starboard. No, okay. Here's the first the first navigational screw up. Our correction is 13 degrees to starboard, not 13 degrees to port. Okay, if I hadn't caught that early, we would have been a very long way off course. Okay, 278 plus 14 is 292. Oh, right there. Okay. It's a little late at night. I may make mistakes like this. Anywho, now that drift correction is applied, God, I'm glad I figured that out. We can have a little look out the window for any obvious navigational checkpoints. Can't really see anything right now. We're just still over these kind of wooded hills, and we will be for a while. Until maybe we pass over the Sarotovskaya area and the... what's this river called? Sikup River, which appears to have its sort of terminus down there. Yeah, that's pretty obvious. Oh, yeah, I should be able to regain track perfectly, actually. So we have an island in the river right next to the town, a smaller one just south of it, and if we pass just south of that, yeah, that should be us regain track perfectly. And I expect to have to do a little bit of a close-up thing here because we made such a wide right turn after the target. Anyway, these navigational minutiae are probably a little bit unnecessary to show all of, so I might just come back if something interesting happens. Well, 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 meine Freunde. That city down there, on our right, is Krimskaya. We are passing over the front line and have had no encounter, as of yet, with enemy fighters. I am not going to utter any phrases which may invoke the wrath of fate to descend and smite us up the backside, because, well, I'm just a little wee bit superstitious like that. But it is a vaguely positive sign and something I never ever expected to happen. So I think what we're gonna do is keep our fingers crossed, and if all goes well, carry on home. Little progress update. At this point, I'm prepared to say that we genuinely won't encounter any enemy fighters. That is the Kerch Strait down there. And that little bay that you can maybe see off in the distance, our home base is on the edge of that bay. Now, this is the part of the mission where I reevaluate my decision to only bring 1,700 liters of fuel in order to get better climb performance. Because while I do think we're going to make it, it's going to be very close. If it weren't for the fact that I can't tell the other members of the formation to do so, we would be diverting to a different field, of which there are plenty in friendly hands in the area, but again, I do think we'll make it, but it is going to come down to the wire here in terms of fuel. We might be landing on fumes, and I only hope that my other members of the formation have been as good or better at managing theirs than I have. We've powered way back in order to conserve fuel on this return trip. But yeah, that's just a little status update. I'm beginning to clench ever so very, very slightly, but I do think we'll make it. Fingers crossed. Okay, lovely people. That down there is Zamorsk Airfield. That is home. We're descending through 2,000 meters. Our fuel state.
It's very close to the E, which means everything's okay.
Yes. I am going to now issue the order for my rest of my flight to break off and land individually, and you should see them breaking off there very nicely. And we are just going to make straight in. And hopefully get everyone on the ground before any of these guys start running out of fuel. Phew. We actually have a little bit of excess speed here, so I might have to do a few little S-turns as we descend. Or a great big forward slip, we'll see. And the wind at ground level, let's actually check it, is from 010 degrees, so we'll want to land pretty much from south to north to be into the wind, so a few S-turns can kind of facilitate that. Oh, stop looking at it. And we should be able to get rid of our speed. Engine temperatures, I'm actually at risk of overcooling the engines because I did a bit of a power off descent, which may have been slightly inefficient actually, but I'm not enough of a super skilled 111 pilot to figure out the most efficient way to do that. I say that, actually, I'm not going to blame myself, I'm going to blame the lack of documentation included for the aircraft, which doesn't have things like the, well, various speeds at different configurations to get best economy, that kind of thing, which would be nice to know for something like this. Anyway, if we do have a mission this long in the future, I will bring more fuel. And to think that I considered bringing only 15 or 1600 liters. If I'd done that, we absolutely would have run out. But, oh well. Okay, we've gotten rid of enough speed. I'll get the gear and flaps out. Oh my god, you... Guys, please don't goon this up when we're almost home. Oof. Okay, I think they're high enough to recover from that. Give me 40 degrees of flap is what I usually like to land with. Propped forward in case we need to go around, but if we have enough fuel to go around. Anyway, we'll land pretty much straight into the wind. Get your speed up, don't stall. And let's bloody well get this over with. I've been sitting in my chair for a long time. That was a long mission. Oh, guys, you're scaring me. Please don't do that. I have seen bombers collide in the landing pattern and have 2 or 3 crews die before. It's something that kind of worries me a lot in these kinds of campaigns. Speaking of things that worry me, is the gear actually down? Yes, that would be an embarrassing thing to mess up at this juncture. Anyway, power's slowly coming back into the flare. Let's land nice and... Okay, never mind, that was a bit of a bounce, but whatever. We'll be okay. Alright, we're down. Decel flapped up. And then get the hell out of the way. I'll just go park in and amongst these Ju-52s here, because I guess it's as good a place as any. Lights off. And I think we're clear of the landing area, so we can come to a stop. Shut down. Landing successful. Okay. And now, before any of these goody birds in the landing pattern decide to run out of fuel or collide with each other and crash, we're going to finish the mission and see what the result really was. So, All objectives completed, including secondaries. I personally destroyed 3 buildings. I think the rest of the formation got quite a bit too. We will finish up and check the lump sum total of the damage that was done. Chug, 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 chug. There we go. So, mission to bomb the supply dump was successful. We somehow didn't encounter enemy fighters, even though we kicked this hornet's nest. All these Soviet fighter bases around Krasnodar. We should have been swarmed by Spitfires, LA-5s, Yaks, but no, not a sausage. But hey, I'm not going to complain. Let's, Who was killed in action? Oh, did one of you Muppets crash in the landing pattern while I wasn't looking? Probably. Well, at least he destroyed 10 buildings for his trouble. I might be able to figure out what happened to that guy when I review the track, but we'll see. Anyway, we destroyed 21 buildings. We completely obliterated the target, so it was probably worth the loss of 1 aircraft if it weren't for the fact that that loss was to something stupid. Anyway, I'm going to click next day and see what the next day's mission holds as a little sort of, well, just to see what's in store for us next time. Chug, 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 chug. Remember who gave KG-55, by the way. Okay, so air operations were suspended from 1st to 3rd of May, 1943. Blah, blah, blah. A new day. Weather is vaguely nice. We got 3 shiny new He-111 H16s and 2 crappy old He-111 H6s and a new chap joining the squadron named Gavin Beckman. Well, we'll see if we can get him killed. Okay, well, we've got 2 missions for the next day. First is to go to a supply dump, also right next to an enemy airfield, and kind of far behind enemy lines, although not quite as far as the last one. So that's what's in store for us next time, but that's going to be about it for now, so toodles.